"Where did you get this?" she asked in shock. "Really? I will show you a clear photo of you passionately kissing another man on the dance floor, his hand on your chest and yours on his ass, and the first thing you ask is, 'Where did I get this photo from?' Does it matter where? Do I have this? Will my answer to your question change the fact that you cheated on me with him?" I asked my wife, with whom we have been together for 7 years. "Honey, I know it looks bad, and I admit we kissed. But it's not cheating. As you can see in the photo, we're among many others. We didn't have sex, obviously," she shot back. "So this is your main defense? No explanation as to who this person is that you're kissing so passionately and why? Are you assuming that because you're not having sex with him in that photo on the dance floor that everything is absolutely fine? I need to know, Tracy, is this your understanding of honoring our marriage vows?" "Brian, I can see you're really upset about this. It's nothing to worry about, I swear. We were just caught up in the moment and it happened. You don't have to worry about it. You're not making the situation any better by making a big deal out of it," she said with conviction. "Innocent, exaggeration. You didn't even tell me his name. Why should I feel bad about someone I don't even know?" I blurted out brightly with sarcasm. "Does it matter what his name is? If I told you, you could do something stupid like start a fight and he'd destroy you. I won't let that happen," she retorted. "I understand. Thank you for your honesty and openness. You made your choice. Now I will make mine," I replied excitedly. I turned around, ran up the steps, and began packing my suitcase for about a week. She followed me quickly. "What are you doing? What does it look like?" "You're packing your suitcase." "But why?" "Because I can't tolerate another minute of your lies and deceit. I need to go away and think before I say or do anything to you that I might regret." I breathed through my teeth. "Don't be stupid, Brian. I know you would never hit me. Well, until today, I knew that you would never cheat on me. So apparently we don't know each other as well as we thought." "Cheating? Who said I cheated on you?" Tracy shouted. "Kissing him wasn't cheating on you and you know it. I've never cheated on you." "This is it," I said sarcastically. "What is here it is. A blatant lie." "But I never lied to you, Brian. I didn't cheat on you with him or anyone else," she screamed. "Oh yeah? Then what is it?" And I handed her another photo taken the same night. "Quite a nice picture of you on your knees in front of him, isn't it? And just in case you try to get away like Bill Clinton and say that this isn't sex either, how about this? It sure looks like sex already, doesn't it?" But where? How? Here it comes again. Does it matter where I got this photo from or how I got it? Will knowing this change the fact that you actually cheated on me and just lied to my face? She dropped the photographs on the floor and began to sob, trying to hug her husband. "Don't touch me, Tracy. Communication is a two-way process. I gave you a chance to be honest with me about everything and start over, but you apparently don't consider me worthy of the truth. I could stay and try to discuss this with you for the sake of our son, if only you would be honest. But it seems like too much to expect from you." I take my phone. "If you call me even once for any reason other than an emergency with little Bobby, I will block your number. Is that clear?" She nodded her head and I walked out, seething with anger, disappointment, and pain that was hard to measure. It was Friday evening when I checked into the motel. I decided that I would take the weekend to think about my next steps. If I had decided to get a divorce, which was my instinctive impulse, Bobby would have grown up in a broken home, and I would have had to pay alimony and maintenance. Basically, I would be paying her to have sex with other men. It's a pity that she couldn't give me any explanation or apology at least. Perhaps she didn't have time to think. So I decided it was best for us to go our separate ways and think about what direction our lives would take from here. The absence of my wife and son affected me greatly, and the loneliness was unbearable. I fell asleep crying. Around noon the next day, the text messages started coming in. After graduating with an engineering degree some time ago, I took a job at a local chemical laboratory that was a packaging center for a large chemical company. After 5 years there, I was offered a position as a facility manager at their flagship R&D center 1,000 miles away. With increased responsibility came a significant increase in salary, so we happily jumped at the opportunity, moved, and settled down. We both left all our friends and family behind. Tracy took a job at a major credit card call center. The call center employed more than 200 employees, most of whom were women Tracy's age. A year after we moved, little Bobby was born. I encouraged her to become a housewife since I made good money, but she enjoyed the company of her work friends. Her work friends quickly became our friends. We were part of a loose group of 6 to 12 couples who met on average twice a month, sometimes at home, often at a restaurant or club. The girls were her colleagues, and the guys, like me, were their husbands. This doesn't mean I didn't have friends at work, but Tracy worked tirelessly to ensure that our social calendar consisted primarily of her group of colleagues. I had no objections as they were all quite nice. The women, without exception, were strikingly attractive, as were the husbands. I sometimes felt out of place among the elegant and stunning men of the group, but they all treated me the same as the others. My current correspondence consisted mainly of this group. It was clear that Tracy not only told them we were in trouble, but she told them the details, and they all urgently requested an audience with me to quickly resolve the situation. I wondered how she was able to hide her ugliness, treatment from me, but freely shared the details with our friends. Now I wondered what these friends were really like. I hate it when other people know my personal affairs, especially those related to my personal life and the intimate details of my marriage. This situation in itself was alarming for me. The only person who didn't call or text me was Tracy. She knew I would keep my promise and block her. Cassidy seemed to be at the forefront of it all. She was Tracy's best friend and they were inseparable. She wanted me to meet the group at her house on Sunday evening at 6 U. My analytical mind suggested that this might be some kind of trap. My car could have been blocked, or the guys would have tried to prevent me from leaving if I decided to leave the meeting earlier than they wanted. I replied that I would meet them at Angus Steakhouse instead, take it or leave it. I could park my car where it couldn't be blocked, and in a public area of the restaurant I could leave whenever I wanted. Reluctantly, they agreed to my proposal. I agreed to the meeting for several reasons. One was the opportunity to get some answers to why Tracy did what she did. Secondly, I was interested to know what our friends thought about infidelity. Whose side will they be on? And thirdly, I was wondering if any of them were involved in her affair. Did they know? Did they arrange it? If they knew about her extramarital activities, neither of them shared their concerns with me. I never back down from confrontation. I deal with almost every problem imaginable as a facility manager and can behave well in almost any environment. I was looking forward to learning more so I could make an informed decision or put them in their place. I left my car in the parking lot near the store and walked into the restaurant. I assumed the group had arrived well before our agreed time to discuss strategy and prepare for confrontation. This made me laugh. There was only one seat on the setup table, and it was next to Tracy. She immediately stood up to meet me as I approached. I stopped her before she could come to me. "If you don't mind, I'd like to sit at the far end of the table away from her if you don't mind. But if you don't mind, then I can sit comfortably at the other table," I explained. Cassidy quickly responded before Tracy could respond. "Of course, that's fine, Brian. Jared, how about giving Brian your seat at the end of the table? Please, Brian, sit down. You're our guest tonight, so dinner is at our expense. Let's all place our orders now." Our group was in a separate dining area of the restaurant, used for additional seating. They must have agreed on it for confidentiality. Everyone quickly placed their orders, and the issue was resolved. Before I allowed Cassidy or anyone else to take control of the conversation, I was determined to get at least one answer before continuing. I handed out 2 copies of a photograph of Tracy passionately kissing another man on the dance floor, one facing left and one facing right. I started, "You all seem very, very interested in Tracy and I resolving our differences. I was shocked that she would tell our private matter to someone else before she and I had a chance to discuss it ourselves, but it just shows her continued disrespect for me and our marriage." Cassidy tried to speak, but I cut her off. "Before any discussion even begins, I want an answer. and I want it now. Take a good look at this photo, everyone. Tracy is passionately kissing another man. She refuses to tell me his name. I'm sure at least one of you here knows who he is. You all say you want to help us solve our problems. Well, the biggest help I need right now is information. If neither of you can be honest with me right now and present the facts as they are, then we have nothing more to talk about. With and complete silence fell over the table. Even the talkative Cassidy couldn't find anything to say. Not one of them offered to say that they didn't know the man. Not one of them offered to say who he was. I got my answer. Thank you for your time. I hope someone is very hungry and can eat my steak. I just lost my appetite. No one here seems really interested in helping us repair our relationship after everything. Sorry. And I got up from the table and left. Tracy called me, begging me to come back, but no one else did. It was obvious that our friends were her friends, not mine. Tracy, Cassidy, and the group were stunned. They planned to have a reasonable discussion with me, but I completely brought down the entire meeting with my stubborn demand. It would take a serious strategy to get through to me, which they weren't prepared to do at the time. I didn't mention this at the restaurant, but I had already checked out of the motel. I stopped at a fast food drive-thru and bought something to eat. Upon arriving home, I spoke to our nanny that Tracy had hired for the evening, paid her, and thanked her for her services. I then quickly ate my food and proceeded to move my clothes and personal items into the spare bedroom. Over the weekend, I went to a local hardware store and bought a pair of matching locks similar to the ones we had on our front and back doors. I installed them on the spare bedroom and bathroom doors, keeping the only keys for myself, not to avoid verbal confrontations with Tracy, but to prevent her from trying to physically seduce me in the shower or in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. Once I was settled in, I spent time with my 3-year-old son, who was the light of my life, before giving him a bath and putting him to bed. Tracy must have realized I was home because my car was in the garage when she arrived at 10:15 p.m. They must have done some serious brainstorming. Either she was back with her lover, and I really didn't know which was true, as sad as that sounded. She ran upstairs excitedly, happy to see me back, and found me in Bobby's room, sitting on a chair, watching my son sleep peacefully as tears streamed down my cheeks. I shushed her and waved her off before she entered the room. There is no need to disturb his innocent sleep. After I quietly closed the door, she tried to hug me, but I stopped her. Undeterred, she smiled from ear to ear and said, "I'm so glad you're back home where you belong. Let me make you something to eat. We have something to talk about." "I've already eaten, but thanks for the offer. So where have you been all this time? Entertaining your lover again?" I meant it. "No, I just left the steakhouse. They can confirm this. They helped me find the right words to get us back on track. I have so much to tell you," she explained. "I will talk to you about whatever you want after you tell me the name of your lover. If you can't do this, we won't have anything to talk about." I can't. I just can't," she said sullenly. "I would like you to be at least half devoted to me, to your husband, as to your lover. I will stay in the spare bedroom until further notice. Please stay away from me and never touch me. Who knows what disgusting diseases you are currently suffering from, but I won't let you keep me away from my son. He needs me as much as he needs you. If you ever decide that you are ready to talk, the next word you will say will be your lover's name. But if you're willing to sacrifice our marriage to protect it, then so be it. However, I do not want you to say another word to me until you are ready to say the name of your lover. As far as I know, you are making arrangements behind my back to pick up our son tomorrow and move in with him." She left, sobbing, with her head down. A week passed, during which Tracy and I happily communicated with Bobby, but, unfortunately, not a word to each other. Finally, on Monday evening after work, I returned home to a big surprise. Things didn't look right before I walked through the door, but I guess they wanted to see me again. Nothing was said to cause any concern, but I felt like they were walking on eggshells. The first words I said were, "Where is Bobby?" I decided that adult conversation would not center around my son. "I took him to the nanny's house earlier. She got him ready for the night," Tracy explained. "I see," I said in surprise. There was pre-planning that I was not involved in. But I didn't see your cars parked on the street. We all wanted to surprise you, Brian, so we all parked a block away and walked. We couldn't risk you just driving by if you saw all our cars, Cassidy argued. Well, you all certainly took me by surprise. What's the matter? Why are you all here? Has something changed recently that I don't know about? I asked. Yes, honey, Tracy began. Can we all go to the living room and explain ourselves? Now I'm ready to answer your question. Certainly, but first I need to go to the toilet for a minute. I have just returned home. I'll be there now. Why don't you all move on? I went into the bathroom in the hallway, relieved myself, flushed the water, and washed my hands. I started recording on my cell phone and carefully placed it in my shirt pocket so the camera was barely visible in case something interesting happened, and joined the crowd in my living room. I was surprised to see 2 more people in the living room who had not been in the kitchen before. I immediately recognized the guy Tracy had been cheating with, sitting next to a woman a little younger than him. Tracy began, Brian, you've already met everyone here except for Elliot Franklin and his wife Gail. They're longtime members of our group of friends, but you've never met them before. I know this might be a bit of a shock to you, but you insisted on to find out who he is, so we all decided that this might be the best way for you to find out his name. If you try to attack him, all the guys here have agreed to come between you. We don't want anyone getting hurt here tonight. So you're finally giving me a name to face, huh? A little late to worry about getting hurt, isn't it? I said sarcastically. Ah, I get it. None of you were for a moment concerned about me getting hurt, were you? Your only concern was making sure this wonder guy here remained unharmed, was it? Don't worry. I have no plans to touch the bastard. I don't want to catch any diseases he may have already given Tracy when he slept with her. There was a groan of disappointment from everyone present in the hall. Cassidy chimed in. Brian, we understand your frustration, however. There is no need to use harsh or salty language. Can we speak calmly and professionally as friends while this matter is resolved? We are trying to give you what you asked for. You wanted his name. And now you have it. We expected that you might want to talk to him, which, as you can see, we have already arranged for you. However, Elliot does not need me to speak for him or on his behalf. He can't quite speak for himself. Our role tonight is only to make introductions. After his introduction, Elliot stood up and extended his hand. I'm afraid we started off on the wrong foot. I hope that by the end of this meeting we can be friends, or at least treat each other with respect. I promise to treat you with respect and courtesy at all times, and hope you'll do the same, Brian. Can I call you Brian? He asked, extending his hand to me. I made no move to respond to his gesture, keeping my hands to myself. First of all, since we have just met for the first time, Mr. Franklin, I prefer you to call me Mr. Wilson. I can't imagine us being friends, which would justify such intimacy. Secondly, you just promised to treat me with respect and courtesy after already showing me utter disrespect. Yet I must meekly ignore your utter insolence and reciprocate your feelings? Fair enough, Mr. Wilson. My proposal related solely to our present discussion. I was not referring to past misdeeds or incidents. If you allow me, I would like to talk to you about what happened between me and your wife. Please do not say her name in front of me, and do not call her my wife. This status may be short-lived, and I am not happy about it. I am weighing the pros and cons of divorce, as you probably already know. Then how should I refer to it, Mr. Wilson? You can call her the woman I married, a point I accept for now. Okay, Mr. Wilson. I would like to discuss what happened between the woman you married and me. I hope I can present the circumstances in a light that you will ultimately find acceptable. All ears, Mr. Franklin. Please enlighten me, I urged. And the man took a deep breath and began to make his point. Look around this room, Mr. Wilson. What do you see? I'll tell you what you see. You see a room full of extremely attractive women and men, including the woman you married and yourself. Do you think this is a coincidence? Don't you find it surprising that your best friend, with whom you have enjoyed so many times, is significantly more attractive than the average man or woman you date? This group inevitably flocked together like birds of the same pen. As the friendship grew, so did the intimacy and expressions of friendship. Every person in this room is in a happy, stable, and committed relationship. This is our first and foremost goal. Once each of us is confident in our relationship with our significant others, we realize that no force on earth can separate us from each other, and each of us here believes the same about you and the woman you married. As I looked around the room, I noticed that all the women were dressed provocatively, not vulgarly, but each woman was dressed in a way that emphasized her assets as much as possible. They were all smiling, as if they were secretly flirting, trying to attract me. He continued, "I may also suggest that my wife Gail is here. She is as beautiful to me as any other woman in this room, and we plan to spend the rest of our lives together. No man in this room, including you, will ever be able to take her away from me. And this knowledge gives me the confidence to share it with others for our benefit and the benefit of others in our group. In return, she is comfortable sharing me with these other beautiful ladies. We are both learning and growing beyond what would be possible by remaining monogamous. It is an outdated and archaic term that no longer binds people together nearly as well as true love, which consists of trust, intimacy, understanding, sharing, and opening up the horizons to great and wonderful things for our marriages. How nice for you and your wife, Mr. Franklin, and the rest of this group, for you all to have sex with each other freely, but this has absolutely nothing to do with me and the woman I married." "Sorry, Mr. Wilson, but didn't you just admit that you have less trust, understanding, and confidence in your relationship with the woman you married than every other couple in this room? Don't you see how wonderful you both could benefit and expand your relationship by opening up for this?" He spread his arms, as if embracing everyone present in the room. "If what you say is true, Mr. Franklin, then you just called every woman in the room, including the woman I married, easy. I am outraged that you turned her head and morals so easily. I find your actions despicable and disgusting. A gentleman never interferes in a marriage relationship, as you clearly have done." "I see where your logic is leading, Mr. Wilson. Rest assured, this is not one-sided. You are also invited to embrace the concepts that we all hold dear here. You could be with any woman in this room right now if you had the desire. When you and the woman you married became part of our group, it was inevitable that you would be approached to participate with us at all levels. The woman you married, due to her daily interactions with colleagues, discussed this topic apprehensively, worried about your possible reaction. It was only after exhaustive conversations with her on the matter that she agreed to a one-time experiment, solely to find out whether she thought it was something from which you both could greatly benefit. She was very wary at first, but soon became convinced and realized that the experience could improve your relationship. If you had not confronted her so harshly that night, she planned to raise the issue with you and discuss the potential benefits that she thought the experience could bring. Mr. Wilson, the woman you married, said that you confused her with your accusatory confrontation before she had a chance to fully enlighten you on the matter. She panicked and retreated into defense, not knowing how to correct my conversation with you in a hostile atmosphere that you have created. I am confident that you will agree with everything that we suggest as beneficial for you and the woman you married. All we need is to find a way that will make you feel a little more comfortable with the idea." "I see," I said, as if seriously considering everything he said. I then looked Tracy straight in the eye and asked, "Is this all true? You discussed all of this with them without my knowledge, and then agreed to test the waters with Mr. Franklin to see if you agreed that it was good for you. Us as husband and wife without even discussing it with me beforehand." Tracy nodded nervously in confirmation before explaining, "They told me how wonderful it was to have this open relationship and how it had strengthened and improved their marriages, and I wanted the same for us. When I went through this experience with Elliot, I appreciated the whole experience to find out how he could improve our relationship, dear. Please believe that my love for you has never wavered, and I only wanted to show you what I learned from him, to convince you that being involved would be beneficial for both of us." She smiled sweetly as she finished, realizing that this was the first real conversation I'd allowed her to have with me since that night. So you expect me to believe that just one wonderful session with a super lover here has given you such skills? This wasn't actually your first time with him, was it? She looked down at her feet, unable to maintain eye contact, confirming my suspicions. Mr. Franklin intervened again. Don't you see, Mr. Wilson? We helped the woman you married understand the benefits. You might as well be involved in all aspects as well. Plus, there are other benefits that you may not have even thought of, he added. Please enlighten me about these benefits, I insisted. Well, Mr. Wilson, the woman you married will learn some valuable lessons during her lovemaking sessions and will be able to bring that knowledge back to you when you make love just like before. I see. So you consider yourself a Casanova of sorts, huh? Mr. Wilson, I am a very experienced and attentive lover, and I am really good at training less experienced lovers like the woman you married. Under my guidance, she will blossom, grow, learn, and make sure that you also benefit from her new experiences. Her time with me and others will allow her to broaden her horizons. Please don't become defensive as I explain this. We all go through periods in our lives when we become complacent and stuck in a rut. Love relationships can lose some of their luster. With no intention of insulting you, the woman you married mentioned that she would like to try new things. I looked Tracy straight in the eyes again. When have I ever resisted any attempts to try something new? If you had the idea that we needed to spice things up in our relationship, then why didn't you ever discuss it with me before you slept with him? She shyly replied, Please don't take it as a bad thing, darling. You're such a gentle and sweet lover, and that's what I need most of the time. But sometimes I want things to be more energetic and direct. That's what Elliot showed me. He never tried to take your place in my heart. He is your complete opposite and showed control and dominance that I really liked. I barely managed to restrain myself from lunging at him and trying to break his neck. If I had ever entertained the idea that Tracy and I could rebuild our relationship and work on it for the sake of our son, that was now lost forever. There was a storm raging inside me, beating endlessly in my chest. On the outside, I showed calm and peace, came to the immutable conclusion of divorce. Now my new task was to collect as much ammunition as possible to repel the blow, creating as much chaos as possible in their lives for their participation in the destruction of my happy home. To achieve this, I needed to show enough interest to give them a glimmer of hope that I was hesitant to consider the offer. I looked at each woman, undressing them with my gaze and not hitting my implied lust. So for me to understand correctly, what you are saying, Mr. Franklin, is that I can have any woman here in this room if I want, and use her to fulfill my fantasies that I have hidden until now my entire married life, simply because the woman I married wasn't ready for it? Tracy looked offended by my statement, but said nothing, not wanting to get in the way of my agreement. Exactly, Mr. Wilson. Any woman you want. They can all be wives. The part of your dreams, and I know this firsthand. I have created unforgettable sexual memories with each of these ladies, and I speak from personal experience. You can even enjoy my wife, Gail, if you wish. He spoke enthusiastically. I could feel the electricity in the room as they expected my sexual desires to override my logical mind. Usually Tracy could do this easily, but not tonight. Well, Mr. Wilson, or can I call you Brian now? Asked the scoundrel. Brian will do. I gave in to gain their trust. Thank you, Brian. Do you see our group in a better light now? Will you and Tracy join us on this new level of intimacy? You won't regret it. Your marriage will only be stronger for it. I guarantee it. As much as it pains me to say this, literally, I joked, I would like a little more time to digest everything that was explained to me tonight. Tracy and I need to have some private one-on-one conversations. Once we have cleared up some issues, then we will get back to you with our answer. Is that acceptable? The scoundrel gave an obviously false smile. He had difficulty pretending to be polite. He didn't expect the delay. He wanted my answer right now, but he wouldn't get it. Of course, he said flatteringly. Take as much time as you need. Then he nodded. Gentlemen? 3 strong men quickly grabbed oar and held me in place. I couldn't move. Although I was held tightly, I did not feel threatened. It was just an unexpected move. Tracy walked over, pulled my cell phone out of my shirt pocket, and started clicking away, deleting all my records. Please understand, Brian. We want to trust you, we really do. But until you fully become one of us, we must take steps to protect ourselves. It was very obvious that you were recording the events of this evening on your cell phone. We cannot afford this level of trust in you at the moment. Tracy nodded towards the villain. He asked her, "Is everything deleted? All of it?" Tracy nodded, saying, "Yes. There is no record of today's events." She then returned the phone to my pocket. It then became very clear that she was already a full member of their group, since he trusted her to carry out this task against my wishes. I showed the look of defeat that the scoundrel was looking for. Mr. Franklin continued, "You see, Brian, don't be so disheartened. I want to believe that you decided to keep the recording mainly to better choose who you will be with when you fully join our group at the highest level. But please understand that we just can't take the chance. There's too much on the line. But I'm sure you've seen enough tonight to make this decision off the record. Every girl here can leave a lasting impression on your body if you give her a chance. We'll know as soon as you can, okay?" He patted me on the back, and the group quietly left the house without much fanfare. Some of the ladies flirted and sent me seductive glances as they walked away, forming a phone symbol with their hand to their ear and quietly whispering, "Call me." After the last one left, I grabbed my keys and headed towards the garage. "Where are you going?" Tracy asked in bewilderment. "Take Bobby, if that's okay," I replied sharply. "I was hoping that we could, get physically close again tonight. Besides, she's expecting him to spend the night. There's no reason to go after them right now, right?" she said seductively, twirling her hair, licking her lips, and showing off a provocative pose in front of me. "I miss my son. Apparently you don't. I'll be back soon," I said. She put her hands on her hips in anger, but I ignored her and left the house. I went to the Angus Steakhouse restaurant. I was hungry, having not eaten dinner, and missing the dish I had ordered but never eaten the last time I was there. They didn't disappoint. I took my time and enjoyed the tender meat, turning over the events of the evening in my head. I hoped that everything would turn out as I planned. Only time will tell. The kind Mrs. Stevenson thanked me sincerely for my generous tip, which I added to her regular hourly rate. I may need to win her over in the near future, separate from Tracy. Bobby was happy to see Dad, and I made him laugh all the way home. I bathed him and fed him before bed. Tracy told me she was making something light for us since we hadn't had dinner. I informed her that I had already eaten and she could just take care of herself and not worry about me. Annoyed by my pettiness, she stayed away from me, not wanting to upset Bobby with our upcoming talk. Since it was Monday evening and we were both working the next day, I also started getting ready for bed. She wanted to talk. "What's going on, Brian? You seemed very interested in Elliot's proposal for our group, and then you rejected me like a hot potato. What happened?" "I'm so glad you asked. Let me answer your question with a few questions. Maybe your answers will give you some insight," I suggested. "Go ahead," she agreed. "Right before they left, 3 men grabbed me in my own home, and you didn't say anything about it, right?" "It wasn't like that," she protested. "Isn't it? 3 men grabbed and held me in my own home? Yes or no, Tracy, did that happen?" "Yes, but—" Before she could object, I interrupted. "Yes, they did. And you didn't say a word of protest to any of the other witnesses who were also silent. Yes or no, Tracy, just answer yes or no," I demanded. "No," she answered quietly. "We've finally gotten to the point. Now listen to the next question very carefully. I don't want to repeat myself. You admit that you did not express any objection to me being held in my own home. You also admit that you took my cell phone and deleted the records from him, not at my request, but at the request of someone else. Is this true, Tracy? Yes or no? Is it true?" Tracy looked down at her feet. "Yes, that's true. I didn't think of it that way. You're making it sound like a betrayal on my part." "That is betrayal, Tracy. Now back to your first 2 questions. Why did I reject you like a hot potato? What happened?" Your own answers should reveal to you the truth about why I do this. You proved tonight that you are on their side, not on mine, not on ours, on theirs. If you have no objections, I'm going to sleep alone today. Again. Tracy began to sob as I left, leaving her in the hallway to reflect on her behavior. Of course, I locked my door. Somewhere around 4 a.m., I heard someone trying the doorknob. 3 or 4 unsuccessful attempts were enough to derail her attempt. On Tuesday morning, I spoke with the vice president of facility management where I worked. Dan, can you recommend me a divorce lawyer? I mean, a good one who will fight as hard for a man as he does for a woman? Please tell me you're not asking for yourself, Brian, Dan pleaded. Unfortunately, it is so. I would have thought that a man of your position would be aware of such things. You seem to know everything, I joked. I know Ted Russ well. He's our contact at the firm that handles all our legal matters. I'm sure he can provide the name of someone good. Let me give him a quick call and I'll get back to you. Thanks, Dan. And no need to talk, Brian. This will remain between us. I respect other people's privacy. You have no idea how nice it is to hear that. Thanks, Dan. I made an appointment with B. Thorenson at Ted's recommendation for 2:30 p.m. that same day. It turned out that this is not B, but B, as in Beatrice. She informed me that her caseload is 70% female and 30% male. But when she takes on a case, she puts her heart and soul into it and fights for her client no matter the circumstances. It didn't take long to convince her of the justice of my position as the injured party, and she happily took on me. She also warned me that I would have to pay child support for 15 years until Bobby turned 18. Additionally, college expenses are usually included in these calculations in the best interest of the child. I explained that I had nothing against providing for my son, but I was hoping for at least 50-50 co-parenting on either a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. She could not make promises, but she promised to fight hard for these conditions. Regarding child support, she explained that I would most likely be obligated to pay it for 3 to 5 years, depending on which judge we get. Based on income differences, the usual outcome in our state was to provide 1 year of alimony for every 2 years of marriage, up to 20 years of marriage. This was then limited to 10 years. Although I would have to live with it, I was irritated by the thought of paying her to have sex with other men. With our plans to grow our family, Tracy and I rented the house we had lived in for the past 4 years and diligently researched house plans and available lots to build our dream home. I had quite a few sketches of the features that would be incorporated into our special hideaway. All these dreams were now nothing more than smoke. At least there was no house to sell, divide, or dispute. Bobby was not committed to any particular residence at his tender age, so if Tracy continued to rent the house, it would not matter to me. The number of her betrayals did not matter. We will inevitably get divorced. B explained that the average time to finalize a divorce in our state is 8 months for an uncontested divorce and a year for a contested divorce. I was hoping to be one of the statistical 8 months. Being tied to a cheating slut held little appeal for me now that my decision to divorce Tracy was final. B also explained that there is no financial benefit to filing for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, but she said it could come in handy if custody issues become contentious. She said divorce papers could be ready to be served as early as Thursday afternoon. I asked her that Tracy be served with the papers at 10 a.m. Friday at work, where many of her friends and co-workers could witness the event. After discussing the divorce issues and agreeing on her fee, I approached her with another legal issue that needed to be resolved immediately after the divorce. Tracy usually arrived home half an hour before me, so it was no surprise that she was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Unlike my usual habits, I avoided the kitchen and went straight upstairs to take a shower. Since I now use the bathroom down the hall, there are fewer opportunities for her to lure me into an intimate trap. I took a change of clothes with me to the bathroom. It was time to start practicing living separately under one roof. When I came out of the bathroom, fully dressed, she was waiting for me in the hallway. "Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. Bobby is already in his high chair in the kitchen. You smell so good," she said with a smile. "I'll be right down. Thanks," I replied, ignoring her remark and opening the spare bedroom door. The tension was palpable, but she didn't say anything harsh. During dinner, she began, "I would like to explain what happened with the mobile phone yesterday." "Come on, I'm listening," I said calmly. "While you were downstairs selecting potential partners and the three of us were upstairs alone, Elliot informed me that he knew that you were recording the events of that evening and that it would not be fair to allow everyone to be exposed to the professional risks that you could expose the group because of the video. After you confronted me with the pictures of him and me together, it bothered him greatly. The right decision was to eliminate the threat. The way you moved your chest, trying to aim the camera, was obvious. He said that they couldn't leave that night until the threat was neutralized. Not knowing if the password was set on the phone, they were willing to take it with them and return it later, after it was cleared. Elliot suggested that I could prevent this if she deleted the entries before your eyes." "I see. And why in the world did they think you would agree to do such a thing to your husband?" "Because I gave them my word, Brian." "I don't understand." "What do you not understand?" "Didn't you give me your word to remain faithful to me on our wedding day?" There was a significant pause after my remark. I was glad about this. "Honey, I don't want you to think that I'm on their side. I'm not at all." "Isn't it? What if the circumstances had been the other way around? If those three men had snatched you from our home, do you think I would have just stood by and allowed it?" "What other choice would you have, Brian? 3 of them would have taken you easily, stupid." "It's true, but knowing that wouldn't stop me. Hell, it wouldn't even slow me down. I might get beat up, but not before I did a lot of damage myself. I'd fight for you, because I would be on your side, not theirs. We were a team once, you and me. Last night, you didn't act like my wife. You acted like one of them." "I'm sorry you can't see it through my eyes, Brian. I explained about the cell phone. I don't know what else to say." "There's nothing more to say, is there?" I argued. "You're right on this topic. How did you know about these photos, Brian? I'd like to know." "I'm sure you'd be interested. Wouldn't it be interesting if one of your friends wasn't as committed to your cause as the others in your group? What if one of your colleagues turned you into me and delivered these photos to my office? How would you feel about that?" "Who? Please tell me. Who? Male or female?" she asked urgently. I can't tell, Tracy." "Why?" "I gave my word," I said with a big smile. She realized that her questions would get her nowhere, so she decided to discuss another topic with me. "We were invited to join them. This is a wonderful opportunity, don't you see? We can grow closer to each other and learn to please each other in ways we never dreamed of before. This will strengthen our marriage." "How is this working so far?" "Our marriage is hanging by a thread. I already feel closer to you," I said sarcastically. "Don't be like that. You didn't even try. You don't know what it's like." "Tracy, our sex life has been so boring, mundane, and unimaginative that you're afraid we can't survive as a couple without inviting other people into our bedroom." "I didn't say that. It doesn't mean we can't survive without it. But don't you want to do more than just survive? Shouldn't we take opportunities to strengthen our marriage when they arise? What would be the harm?" "The harm, as I see it, is that it destroys the trust we once had. That's what you've already done with your experiments. Instead of strengthening our marriage, it's tearing it apart. Perhaps no one else around you considers loyalty a worthy quality, but I do. Obviously, your friends don't think much of it. They proved it last night. I don't trust you anymore, Tracy. Ever since I saw those 3 photos, I've been wondering who you're with. You can have fun today. You've proven that you're quite capable of doing whatever you want behind my back. If it's so important to you and you believe in it so much, why didn't you come to me first and talk about it before you jumped into bed with another man?" "Because I knew how you would react. I thought that if I could participate and understand the benefits of it, I could bring home everything I learned and we would both benefit from it. Once you saw the improvement in me and my attitude to sex, I hoped that you would recognize the value of it and agree with enthusiasm. So, essentially, you and this smug asshole consider yourselves to come from a position of higher enlightenment and understanding, believing that lower beings like me must be gradually trained to slowly grasp the truths of life that you two somehow instinctively see. How elitist of you to generously allow your superior knowledge to flow down to this lowly peasant. I had no idea how happy I was. Sarcasm was now dripping from my every word, and she felt it. For several days, I searched for information about Elliot and Gail Franklin, hoping to find their connection to the group. I only found one Elliot Franklin in public records, a homeless man who was arrested for soliciting people for money downtown as a panhandler. The photo and age didn't even come close to matching the man who slept with Tracy. I decided to find out more about them. I decided to have Tracy serviced at 10 a.m. on Friday as I had to attend a local building maintenance managers meeting. We usually meet every quarter for 2 to 4 hours, including lunch. A variety of contractors sponsor the event to offer their services to the various institutions represented. That way, if, not when, Tracy calls, my secretary will acknowledge my extended absence, and I will intentionally leave my cell phone on silent. The only call I will answer will be one that requires my attention at work. I didn't avoid Tracy completely. I just wanted to give her time to get over the initial shock before talking to her. When I eventually returned to work, I called her back from the many messages she had left for me. I heard her quickly move away from the others and start talking to me. Finally! Are you serious? Suing me in front of my friends? Do you understand how humiliating that was for me? Are you really going to divorce me over this? I told you it was nothing, Brian. When will you understand that? Why aren't you answering the phone? Why are you refusing to talk to me about this? My secretary should have told you that I was at a meeting of building maintenance managers. I just got back to the office and called you right back. I have work to do, you know. It doesn't stop just because you want talk. And as for the conversations when I refuse to talk to you, you're the one who's been avoiding talking to me for the past 2 days. I never turned down a conversation. I'm talking to you now, aren't I? But since we both have jobs, let's continue this conversation at a more appropriate time after work. Then we can talk about whatever you want. She cried into the phone. I don't want a divorce, she sobbed. Please, Brian, don't divorce me. We'll talk tonight, okay, Tracy? Okay, she said, sobbing. I love you. Then see you tonight. Goodbye, Tracy. I only had one meeting left at work that day, and it was a short one involving a lab that was having problems. I called our building automation contractor to solve the problem. Surrounding yourself with quality people makes your job a lot easier. I left an hour early, as Friday nights are usually less problematic. Most people don't want to solve problems on a Friday afternoon. However, I realized that I would have to face this problem, and the best way is to meet her face to face. Realizing that she might not be in the mood to cook that night, I bought dinner at Chick-fil-A and texted her about it. She arrived shortly after me. I took Bobby's bag and carried him out of the car and into the house. She rushed towards me, hugging me as I held our boy in my arms, knowing that I wouldn't push her away abruptly and upset Bobby. I sat him in his high chair and helped feed him. Toddlers can definitely be messy eaters. He is at the stage where he loves to throw food, so there is very little left on his tray in front of him to throw. She thanked me for the takeout. We both spoke kindly to Bobby and were happy, although she sometimes shed tears while doing it. I spent most of the evening with him, never moving far from his side until he was put to bed again. He was my support, my goal, my reason to endure difficult circumstances. I knew what was coming, and I was as prepared as I could for it. She was looking at divorce papers when I walked into the living room where she was. She took a deep breath to calm herself before speaking. I'm sorry, Brian, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? To be honest, this is the first apology you've offered me since this all started. What exactly are you apologizing for, Tracy? I'm sorry you saw those photos and found out about it that way. I can only imagine how it must have shocked you. I understand. You regret what I found out, but not that you cheated on me. Understood. Don't say that. Elliot said that once you realize the benefits of our community, you will accept it and join our group on an intimate level because of the freedom you will get by being with other women, just like I will with other men. Naturally, he said so. It appears that you and Elliot both made the same mistake by not consulting me beforehand on matters such as infidelity. It's a pity that you believed his words more than mine about my character. Contrary to popular belief, Elliot is not a repository of information about me or our marriage. He can be an expert in many things, but when it comes to knowing me, he is an absolute failure, just like you seem to have turned out to be. Listen, honey, I now realize that I approached this completely wrong. You're right. I should have come to you first before I got involved in this without you knowing. After you saw my reaction that night, Elliot told me that in retrospect, if I had approached you first, the outcome would have been much better. He is still confident that you will agree in the end, but now I am not so sure anymore. Please call off this stupid divorce and let's start over. Get back on track. Tracy, this train has derailed and caused irreparable damage. There is no way to get it back on the tracks. You blew it up with dynamite when you let that idiot get into bed with you, and then you betrayed me on top of it all. Just sign the papers, and let's both pick up the pieces of our lives and move forward on separate paths. I know you, Brian. You don't want Bobby to grow up in a broken home, raised by two parents living in separate houses. If I get married again, you don't want him calling another man daddy. No man wants that. For your son. Think about it. Reconciliation is the best option for both of us. I wouldn't want him calling another woman mom if you got married after a divorce. And neither would you. Perhaps it is. You should have thought about all this before you betrayed your vows, not after. You're right. I would hate to hear him call another man daddy, but it's better to grow up in a broken home than live in a house full of lies, deception, and debauchery. If we had not divorced, I would still never have participated in your group of libertines. They may be physically attractive, but to me, they are repulsive, and you would continue to have sex with just anyone every night, but that would never happen to me. I could never be intimate with you again, Tracy. Remember that. You don't mean it. You're just saying it to hurt me, and it really does. So score yourself a point, Brian. Look, what if I completely give up on this idea? I swear I'll never participate again. Nothing like that with them. What if I turn my back on them as friends? I'm desperate, darling. You and Bobby are the two best things that have ever happened to me in my entire life. I'm sorry that you think that I turn my back on us, but it's not like that. I value you both above everything else. I can hear the words coming out of your mouth, Tracy, but I just don't believe you. You've already proven that you can lie. I can't trust anything you say now. It's too little, too late. Just sign the papers and let's go. Let's get this over with as soon as possible. Never. I will never sign those damn papers in my life. I don't want a divorce, and I will fight you every step of the way, no matter how long it takes. I may have lost you for now, Brian, but I intend to get you back. I'm not giving up on us. I have more faith in us than you do. I'll crawl to you on my knees until you take me back. It's a pity that you didn't have faith in us enough to stay true to your wedding vows. You've heard the old saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. And through this prism, I will always look at you. I pricked. She began to cry again, perhaps realizing that she had an impossible task ahead of her. Now what? She asked. I hope you don't expect me to leave. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with Bobby. Besides, neither of us have anywhere to go, she said. You're right about that. With you out of the picture for me, Bobby has become my whole world. I don't want to spend any more time away from him than necessary. So I've decided to continue living here while the divorce is going on. She jumped for joy, clapping her hands. I continued, Don't worry. I'll stay away from you. I'll no longer expect you to wash my clothes, cook my lunches, or clean up after me. You take care of your needs, I take care of mine, and we both will. Take care of Bobby. All I ask is that you avoid touching me. To me, you are a walking disease from head to toe, disgusting to look at, disgusting to think, and impossible to continue the marriage. We both will coexist under the same roof, but it will always only coexist until divorce occurs, which will never lead to reconciliation. Her joy soon turned to despondency as she realized what I had just said. I heard what you said, Brian, but divorce is a long way off, and we both know that a lot can happen over a long period of time. I'm going to get you back, honey. I swear I will. As long as you continue to meet and talk with your so-called friends, I don't have a chance in hell. I will never be around them again. As you so clearly pointed out, I don't own you or have control over your behavior. But if you ever bring one of yours here to this house, I swear on my life that you and he will seriously regret it. Understand? Of course, honey. I already told you that I would turn my back on them if that's what it takes to get you back. Do you want me to quit and become a full-time housewife? No. It's too late now. Besides, if you did, it would only increase my alimony payments in the divorce. Tahir didn't like my remark, but kept a cheerful smile for my sake. I decided that our days of confrontation were behind us. There was nothing she could say now that would make me lose my temper and rebuke her again. Both of us have suffered enough from insults and innuendos. I could be a professional both at work and at home. I decided to treat this as a temporary business arrangement. Nothing was allowed to interfere with my time with my son. For a couple of weeks we had short, polite conversations, talking only about what was necessary. We surprisingly agreed with some of my lawyer's suggestions. In the interim, I will pay all the rent if Tracy pays all the utilities. I canceled all utilities that were in our joint names and re-signed them in her name only. Both of our cars were already paid off, so we each paid our own gas and insurance. Each of us took care of our food, so there was no need to share food. Separating from her financially was not as difficult as I expected. Since I was still paying the bulk of our expenses, she was amenable. I transferred half of our savings to a new account in my name only, and left the remaining amount in the account in her name only. She became quite angry with me for a few days after this, but soon realized that I was only complying with what was outlined in my terms of the divorce agreement, which she still politely refused to sign. After I completed all my actions, she decided to take a few steps of her own. She started dressing more and more provocatively when she was around me. She dressed conservatively for work, but after her evening shower, she invariably appeared in skimpy and sometimes see-through clothing. 5 months after she was served with the divorce papers, she told me that she was going out with Cassidy, her best friend, on Saturday nights if I didn't mind babysitting Bobby. I replied indifferently that it was fine as long as she didn't bring her or any of her lovers here to the house. I decided to join a bowling league sponsored by my employer on Saturday nights when it was out. I had fun making a fool of myself on the trails, and Bobby was delighted with the amount of attention from the ladies who were there. It was much better than sitting at home wondering what Tracy might be doing or who she might be doing it with. One time I came home after her, and she asked where I was with Bobby. I told the truth. She asked if she could come with me next time, and again I honestly answered that I only go there when she leaves so as not to sit at home alone. My answer disappointed her greatly, but pleasing Tracy was no longer my concern. She often asked me how we can get back to a loving relationship if I never give her a chance. She never signed the divorce papers. It took a whole year. 6 months after filing the lawsuit, B. Thorenson, my lawyer, contacted me saying that Trace's lawyer successfully achieved 10 mandatory family counseling sessions, 2 per week. I had to be present and couldn't just sit there without saying a word for the entire session. I had to answer every question the consultant asked me. I asked her if I could answer each question with the same simple short sentence. B said she didn't care what I said as long as I said something that related to our marriage. I thanked her and hung up. Of course, Tracy's lawyer arranged for the marriage counselor to side with the wife and easily blame the husband. I didn't care what the therapist thought of me, as long as I lived up to the letter of the law. I responded to every question and statement from both Tracy and the therapist by saying, I do not want to remain married to a woman who is cheating. It didn't take long before they both became irritated and angry with me, but while my repeated remark may have been brief, it also applied to our marriage. I withstood the barrage of verbal attacks directed at me by both women with a smile on my face. I never raised my voice, called anyone names, or used a single harsh word. After the 5th unsuccessful session, the therapist canceled the remaining sessions, citing unproductiveness and a waste of time. The remaining months passed without changes to the status quo. I continued to spend every free moment with Bobby and could tell that he felt the special connection that I had worked so hard to create. 4 days before the divorce hearing, Tracy moved out of the house and took Bobby with her. I was also served with a restraining order against both of them until their court date. After that, B contacted me with 2 pieces of news. I tried to warn you, Brian. She now claims that you abused her on 3 separate occasions. She did not report this at the time of the incidents because she hoped for a reconciliation, considering it the price she was willing to pay to keep her child in a 2-parent household. Medical records submitted by her lawyer show several bruises and other evidence. She is countersuing for full custody, allowing you only rare supervised visits, supervised by Child Protective Services. I'm afraid she has put you in a bind situation. Is there even a grain of truth in her accusations? B, you know me much better. Not a word of this is true, not a word. Okay? I just needed to hear it from you. I will fight tooth and nail for you until the very end. But I have little hope of refuting her accusations without irrefutable evidence to back up your denials. B. Has she provided the necessary information that you indicated would be necessary to investigate her allegations? Yes, she had. The details are in a file in my office. Can you email me the information her lawyer provided? Sure, whatever it takes. Now remember, you cannot call her, email her, text her, or contact her or your son in any way until I tell you otherwise. Understand? Nothing. If she calls you and you hear her voice, don't say a word. Just hang up immediately. Do you understand? She commanded. Got it, I repeated. 2 days later, walking into the house after work, I was shocked to see Tracy sitting at the kitchen table. Her car was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps she was traveling with someone else. She was waiting for me. I had no idea why. My first instinct was to run to avoid violating the restraining order, but she loudly called out to me before I could even get out the door. Brian, turn around and listen to me if you ever want to see Bobby again. She certainly caught my attention. However, trying not to talk to her, I just looked at her and kept my distance. Oh, I understand. A restraining order. Well, you don't have to say a word. Just listen. I remained calm and did not make any gestures that could be misinterpreted as aggressive or confrontational. First, give me your cell phone so I can turn it off. I put it on the kitchen table. She took it and turned it off to make sure there was no recording. She continued. I tried my best to persuade you to come, but you were so stubborn that I had to resort to desperate measures. What does it feel like when the shoe is on the other foot? I don't feel good now, do I? Sorry, Brian, you left me no other choice. We both know that you never touched me. I told you before that you never hit me in a million years, and I still believe that, even here and now. But I needed to make sure that I got full custody of our son, leaving you with only crumbs of time, which you can spend with our little boy. It pains me to be so cruel to you, Brian, but this has given me the opportunity to negotiate with you. Tracy cleared her throat and continued. If you call off the divorce, make it stop, and willingly agree for us to join our group of friends as they generously suggested, then I will lift the restraining order and move back here. We will be able to resume our happy family life. Bobby won't come from a broken home. He will be raised by both parents living happily under the same roof. Think about it, Brian. What do you not like? I promise you that you will quickly get used to it. I'll be happy to show you new tricks that I've already learned right here and now if you're ready. It might be too much, too soon. What do you say, Brian? Will you get off your high horse and live with me in the real world for a change? You'll have a great time. I looked her straight in the eyes. I let her know that I was seriously considering her offer. So what you're saying is, if I agree with you and your friends, you're saying you won't limit my access to Bobby in any way. Why would I ever want to come between a loving father and his son? You know as well as I do that the child loves you more than me. He constantly asks about you, and it breaks my heart when I hold him away from you. Just say yes, Brian. Just say yes, and all our problems will disappear, she coaxed. First I lost you, then I lost my son. My life is unbearable. I miss him madly. I want to be with him so much, I cried. Just one word from you will make everything right, Brian, and everything will be restored, she insisted. Give me time to think about this. I need to do some mental exercises to figure out how I can share you with other men. I just need time, okay? Okay, honey, I hear you. You always analyze everything from an engineer's point of view. We have a court hearing in 2 days. I need to hear from you tomorrow. Just send me one word, yes, so I know you're with me. Us and I will make things right. But if I don't hear from you before the hearing, I will punish you for the rest of your life. Your son will grow up hating you. I promise that, and you will pay me for it. Please don't make me do this is with you for Bobby's sake. Okay, honey? Make the right choice for his sake. The bitch hit me where it hurt the most. My son. Nothing in the world was more important to me than this boy. I'll answer as soon as I can. Now please go away, I insisted. She walked past me with a grin on her face. She knew she had me cornered. I held my breath until I heard the door close. I looked out the window to see a shiny Lexus pull up next to her. The driver, of course, was Elliot Franklin. He must have valued her very much to go to such lengths to bring her into their group. I had a lot to think about. B informed me that my presence at the divorce hearing was not required. My presence wouldn't change the outcome, but I wanted to be there. As I left the men's room to head to the courtroom, Tracy walked up from somewhere and blurted out, "You had your chance, you stupid idiot. I'm going to tear you apart there. Your son will never know your name, and he'll grow up calling you another man's father. I will marry a real man who is not so insecure, who trusts and believes in me and our marriage, who is ready and open to new experiences, unlike you." She then spat in my face and quickly walked away, causing gasps from the audience who wondered, oh, what a cruel crime I committed against such a beautiful woman. I took out a handkerchief and wiped my face. I only hoped that my lawyer was half as good as her reputation was said to be, as I walked into the courtroom and sat in the back, waiting my turn. It was a busy day in court. It was interesting to listen to some crazy divorce cases while I waited my turn. I noticed that those who represented themselves actually had fools as clients. Our business didn't start until 1 p.m., which made for a long day. Tracy was called to testify first because she filed a restraining order and made allegations against me. Divorce was a minor issue compared to this. I listened carefully as she testified about everything I was accused of, including the dates, times, and specific locations of the alleged attacks. This was her bargaining chip for getting custody of the child support, and possibly even jail time for me after this, since, strangely, formal charges had not yet been filed against me. I was silent while she tearfully talked about her terrible days and beatings at my hands. My lawyer quietly drew flowers in the margins of her notes. Tracy and her lawyer seemed stunned that my lawyer didn't ask her more questions. Her smirk at me as she stood up to leave the witness box said it all. She knew she had won. Even my lawyer did not dispute a single statement of hers. She was ready to fulfill her promise to me to turn my son against me. I shuddered at the thought. Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. James McMahon to the stand, B asked. The judge nodded in approval, and a nondescript man of average height took a seat in front. Tracy and her lawyer exchanged glances, and she simply shrugged. It looked like he was a stranger to her. Please say your full name for the record, sir, B asked. James Winfred McMahon. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. May I call you James? Jim, please call me Jim. Sure, thank you, Jim. Could you tell the court where you work and what your business does? Yes, ma'am. I own and operate McMahon Investigations and Security. Jim, could you please tell the court how you met my client, Mr. Wilson? Yes. He came to me about 14 months ago with concerns about his wife, Mrs. Tracy Wilson. He suspected infidelity, but had no proof. We offer private detective services to confirm or refute such suspicions, and he contracted with us on the spot. I see. And what did you discover during your surveillance of Mrs. Wilson, Jim? We were able to gather evidence of her infidelity and provided him with 3 photographs documenting her relationship with another man. Were the photographs you provided him the only copies of the existence of her connection? No, madame. We store all photos and recorded videos on secure cloud servers. We take maintaining the chain of evidence very seriously in our fully licensed and insured agents trusted in this and several other judicial districts. We have all the originals. Mr. Wilson was only provided with copies. And do you have other copies of these same images with you, sir? Yes, I have one right here. I can confirm that these are copies of the raw originals. Thank you, Jim. Your Honor, if I may, we would like to enter into evidence these 3 copies of photographs taken by McMahon Investigations. The judge accepted the photographs, examined them, nodded, and handed them over to the bailiff for processing. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Jim, was that all you had in common with Mr. Wilson? No, madam. He was concerned that her relationship with an unidentified gentleman could be an ongoing activity and asked me to suggest ways to determine whether this was an ongoing activity. I recommended that Mr. Wilson install hidden miniature surveillance cameras and microphones throughout his home, which could be constantly monitored. Such devices could record phone calls, secret meetings, and graphic images of infidelity. And Mr. Wilson hired your company to do this? Yes, ma'am. We installed the equipment the next day while Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were at work. Objection, Your Honor, Tracy's lawyer complained. I see where this is going, and before it goes any further, I ask that you consider any evidence obtained through these disgusting hidden cameras to be inadmissible. Mr. Wilson could have easily edited or altered any such footage to make the situation appear as it did. It pleases him and denigrates my client. This is unacceptable. Judge Cora Feldman listened to the objection and looked at B. Before I make a decision on your objection, Counselor, I would like to determine whether there is a basis for this. Counselor Thorenson? Thank you, Your Honor. Jim, can you explain to the court the nature and type of CCTV system that you installed in Mr. Wilson's home at his request? Of course. The cameras transmit data to a laptop hidden in the space under the house. The laptop is connected to a wired Ethernet hub, which constantly transmits all collected data to our secure cloud servers. Mr. Wilson did not have access to raw recordings. The laptop does not store any local recordings or files other than the web address to which the streaming data is sent and stored. Mr. Wilson's only interaction with the system was to replace the tiny batteries in the camera transmitters on a monthly basis. Judge Feldman smiled at Jim and nodded. I've seen you in my courtroom before, Mr. McMahon. Your firm has a stellar reputation. Objection overruled. Thank you, Your Honor, B said, pleased. Jim, you heard Mrs. Wilson's statement accusing my client of assault. She handed him a piece of paper. These are the dates and times of the alleged attacks as described by Mrs. Wilson. In your opinion, Jim, is there any basis to her charges? No, madam, no. How can you be so sure, Jim? When your office provided us with these specific dates, times, and locations, my staff went back and reviewed the archived records from these dates and locations at Mr. Wilson's home. In each specific, in this case, the recordings show a fairly quiet house, where Mr. Wilson is happily playing with his son, and Mrs. Wilson is alone in another room of the house. Wilson's home was peaceful at the time of the alleged attacks. No instances of abuse of any kind were observed in the recorded videos. Tracy and her lawyer seemed only interested in gender. There were no glances of meetings. Their business fell apart. Jim, can you offer any additional information about the charges she has made against Mr. Wilson? Yes, madam, I can. I have here a transcript of a telephone conversation made by Mrs. Wilson the day before she moved in. Of course, this is only her side of the conversation, but in it, she clearly says that she hates to resort to this against her husband she says she loves very much, but resorting to having someone else beat her up so she could claim it was him was obvious. She stated she was going to use this as leverage over him to convince him to give in to her desires. Objection, Your Honor, this is hearsay, her lawyer exclaimed. I can provide the original recordings of her making all these statements in her own voice if necessary, but this transcript is an accurate reflection of the words she spoke on the phone to someone other than her husband, Jim protested indignantly. Tracy's lawyer sat down and offered no further objection. B said, Thank you, Jim, for your expert testimony. There are no further questions, Your Honor, and sat down. Judge Feldman looked at Tracy's lawyer. Do you want to ask questions of this witness, lawyer? Devastated, he said, "No questions, Your Honor." Judge Feldman instructed, "You may sit down, Mr. McMahon. Thank you." After my private investigator took his seat, the judge continued, "I see what's going on here. An innocent man is being accused of crimes he apparently did not commit, in an attempt to sway the court in favor of full custody of the mother's child. In the process, Mrs. Wilson committed false statements. False statements are a third-degree felony and can result in up to 36 months in prison. A recording of this hearing will be turned over to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges. I hope he will file charges against you, Mrs. Wilson. I am here and now granting full custody of the child, Bobby Wilson, to his father, Brian Wilson. Mrs. Wilson will have visitation rights at Mr. Wilson's discretion. Mr. Wilson, I strongly advise you to be generous with visitation rights. Your child needs time with his mother." I nodded in agreement to the judge. She continued, "As for alimony, I am inclined not to award it, given Mrs. Wilson's cruel treatment of her husband, but I have compassion. Alimony in the amount of $1,000 per month, payable on the first of each month, will be awarded to Mrs. Wilson for the period of 3.5 years or 42 months. Each party will retain their respective automobiles. Checking and savings accounts will be divided equally between the spouses based on the balances that were in the accounts on the date of filing of the divorce. Each party will retain their respective retirement accounts. Since Mr. Wilson will have primary custody, child support will not be ordered by the court. Mr. Wilson, as your guardian, I give you the authority to decide your current residence. Do you want to stay there, or are you planning to move?" I woke up. "Your Honor, I don't want to live there a day longer than necessary. Tracy can continue to rent the house if she wants. Either way, I'll be moving." "Okay, Mr. Wilson. The lease of the current residence is left to the discretion of Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson?" Tracy rose unsteadily to her feet. "You have a maximum of 8 hours to return the child to Mr. Wilson. If you refuse to comply, you will be found guilty of contempt of court. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied tearfully. "Okay," said the judge. "I suggest that you settle this before you leave this building today. All restraining orders are lifted, and I am here and now granting the petition for divorce in Wilson versus Wilson. Both of you must receive your divorce papers within 30 days. Tracy was devastated when she realized she had lost her family. She approached me to carry out the judge's order. "If you don't mind, Brian, I'll bring Bobby to your house after dinner today. I'd like to spend a few more hours with him before I give him to you." "You don't have to do that, Tracy. I was just waiting to see the outcome of these hearings. I've already found a new apartment, and I'll ask some friends to help me move there as soon as I leave here." I handed her a piece of paper. "Here is the address of my furnished apartment. I'm only taking Bobby's things, my personal belongings, and tools. You can take all the furniture. Drop Bobby off at this address tomorrow at noon. I should be settled in by then." She nodded at me sadly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, really. This is not the outcome I ever imagined. Well, since life with me was so boring and monotonous, from now on you can have the exciting and loving lifestyle you've been craving without me. Good luck in your next open marriage," I quipped. She didn't answer back. "Brian, I want to thank you." "For what?" "For not going against Elliot and Gail Franklin. They really are wonderful people. It's a shame you'll never get to know them like I do." She expressed her gratitude. "You're welcome. I don't care about Elliot or Gail. As far as I know, they don't even exist for me. No, not Elliot, not Gail. But you know who really interests me? The company where you work. I found out from the department HR that your company has a very strict laissez-faire policy because there are a lot of women working there and they want to protect them from predators. Tomorrow I will file a lawsuit against your company claiming that gross violations of their policies have caused the destruction of my marriage and almost cost me my son. Ronald Hensley will be named as the main culprit. It seems he slept with over a dozen women working there, violating company policy. You may have heard of him. He's your manager." Tracy stood there in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I continued, "As it turns out, I already knew her lover's real name from day one. My private child Ective is very good at what he does and worth every cent he charges. An engineer always approaches a problem from a knowledge perspective. If we don't have the answer, we find someone who does. That's what we do. B, my shark lawyer, filed a lawsuit against Tracy's call center for $1.5 million and settled it for a tidy $1 million. She kept $250,000, and I got the rest. On the day I received the settlement check, I wrote Tracy a check for $42,000 in one payment. My child support obligations were paid in full by her own company with a large margin. Now I could build my dream home. Rumors spread quickly in the workplace. Quite a few single women where I work look at me as potential prey. But having just gotten out of this crazy marriage, I think I'll focus on Bobby for a while before diving back into social dating. Free at last. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.